This is the whole 10 yards, your midweek NFL fix from the BBC, new for the 2025 season. If you're anything like me, you watch the games on a Sunday night, catch up a little bit on the Monday before Monday Night Football then ends your NFL weekend. So here we are, every Tuesday, just when you need a little bit more before the live action's back on Thursday night. Each week we'll go the whole 10 yards on just one topic, and you will have a chance to get involved too with our Ask Me Anything feature. We hope it'll be informative, insightful and in-depth. And on this first edition, we'll get all three guaranteed in the company of our three guests. They are the former Buffalo Bills coach and GB flag football star Phoebe Schechter, from ESPN, their analyst Matt Miller, and the NFL Network national insider Ian Rappaport. What a lineup for our first show. Thanks, guys, for joining us. It really is a pleasure to have you with us. So, Phoebe, football's back.
I am so excited. I mean, we've been waiting for this for so long. Thursday night's going to come, and then you've got us in studio all Sunday. I mean, this is the best time of year because every single person, every single team has hope.
Listen, the off-season can, for some of us, feel incredibly long, although for Matt and Ian, you're both incredibly busy during the off-season. So what, you get a week off now? Ian, are you going to relax now the football starts?
I mean, I will say the best part of the week is you get through the whole thing, you do all the work, you prepare for Sunday, and then probably from like 1 o'clock till maybe like 2 or 2:30 on Sunday, you just get to watch football before things start happening, and that is an extremely fun time. And then, then everything usually goes haywire and there's a lot of things to report on. But during that small window, it is just fun, and that's awesome.
And the draft's the big thing for you, Matt, isn't it? So do you give yourself a couple of weeks off that, after that at least?
I get a little bit more time off than Ian does after the draft. I try to disappear for a little while, and then the process restarts. And this past weekend, we had week 1 of the college football season, which was awesome and hectic, and it lasted 5 full days. So I'm very ready for NFL games to get here, because that's when I kind of get to kick my feet up and just watch and be a fan.
OK, somebody give these guys a break already. We're not even in week 1 yet. But this week, we're going the whole 10 yards on deciding which teams are in their Super Bowl window. Who has built a roster worthy of winning the whole thing next February in Santa Clara, where Super Bowl 60 will be contested. The salary cap means that you cannot just amass all the best players at the franchise with the deepest pockets. So it is a delicate balance every year. And Ian, I imagine you spend your entire time on the phone with these teams trying to work out how they're going to achieve that delicate balance. What makes a Super Bowl window, and how do teams get in it?
Yeah, I think there are two things, and of course, both revolve around the quarterback position. One, and a really great way to do it, is when you have a star quarterback who's really good early, and you can build a team around him while he's on his rookie contract. It's kind of rare. Doesn't happen very often. I would say the Washington Commanders are in that spot right now where you can spend a ton of money on veterans and maybe the sort of upper middle class of your team that you might not otherwise spend on, and surround your young star cheap quarterback with all of the pieces you could possibly need. San Francisco 49ers have been there before this year when they signed Brock Purdy to a deal. So I think that's one thing. The other part of it is when you do get a quarterback that's on his veteran big money deal, how well do you draft? Because if you continue to draft well, like Philadelphia Eagles are a great example of that. There's a couple others. But you can build really good pieces cheaply, knowing you have to pay your quarterback $50, $55, $60 million. So that championship Super Bowl window really revolves around how do you build around your quarterback based on the salary that he's having that year and maybe the year after, the year after.
OK, let's take those reverse. So, Matt, the draft, so important because players are cheap and they're young. That was Matt. Matt, did you manage to catch that question? The draft's so important.
You dropped out, yeah.
OK, so the draft is so important because players are cheap and they're young. We might have lost Matt, so we'll ask Phoebe a different question, shall we? Phoebe, tell me, listen, it's about the quarterbacks, and if the quarterback is, for example, Joe Burrow, who famously said, there is a Super Bowl window in Cincinnati, every year I am here, I am that good. Cocksure may be, but there's a truth in that.
There absolutely is. I mean, Joe Burrow has completely changed that franchise. Now, the biggest issue with the Bengals is ultimately their defense.
Yeah, every time
but
he asked
if
that
you-
question, it dropped out. I apologize.
You carry on, Phoebe.
if you look at what Joe Burrow's been able to do, I mean, he was breaking records all year long. And ultimately, you have one of the top receivers who is a triple crown winner in Jamar Chase. So offensively, they've had an incredible package they've been able to put together. I mean, for a team to be losing 4+ games and scoring over 30 points goes to speak to the level of the team. But with Joe Burrow in town, there absolutely is a chance for them to have a Super Bowl run. And, you know, that's why he's Joe Cool out there.
Okay, so let's see those teams that we think, that is, we here at the Whole 10 Yards, are in their Super Bowl window. Definitively, no questions asked, unless you want to ask a question about them. So these are those teams. There are 4 from the AFC, 5 from the NFC. The Ravens, Bills, Bengals and Chiefs in the AFC. The Lions, Packers, Eagles, 49ers and Commanders. Matt, what do you think of those 9 teams?
Those are the best teams in the NFL, and they have been consistently. I think it goes back to what Ian and Phoebe were speaking on, is these teams have established quarterbacks, and that is the most important thing right now. I think for Washington especially, you have a team that does have a quarterback going into the second year of his contract, so they've been able to afford to put pieces around him, like Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel, and they were able to extend Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. So these teams all make sense. The one that I would question right now would be the San Francisco 49ers. They're coming off a disappointing year. But I think when you have Kyle Shanahan, when you have Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, some of the pieces that they have the weapons to be a perennial contender, but they have to stay healthy. That has been a huge issue for the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan. And already this year, we're seeing the injuries creep up, with Brandon Ayuk being on the PUP list, with Juan Jennings being limited and wanting a new contract. There are so many injuries that I think you're constantly watching for San Francisco that maybe put some more on the bubble than the other teams mentioned here.
Yeah, so Ian, 2 of those teams are not playoff teams from last season. That is the Bengals, who I think we all agree should be there, but the 49ers perhaps shouldn't be. It does take quite a lot for a non-playoff team to be in their Super Bowl window the next season.
It does, but you really got to be put together in a way where every time you are playing, a team knows, like, all right, this could be one of the best teams in the NFL. To me, not just based on Joe Burrow's words, but just based on the reality of the situation, that's where the Bengals are. Like, to me, like, I know that the Bengals didn't make the playoffs last year, but if they won the Super Bowl this year, like, that wouldn't be the most surprising outcome. I would say, okay, like, they're good enough, and they got a quarterback, and they got some star receivers, and they got a good young running back. Like, they have some guys. So I don't know that would be kind of the biggest surprise. The 49ers, same thing. They had so many injuries last year. What's interesting to me, and I'm just looking at your list right now, you got a couple teams, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but you got a couple teams where I would say they're pretty close to their window. Like, and maybe might be entering it for like a long time. The Denver Broncos and the Texans would be a team I would say like those teams could be really, really good this year with good young quarterbacks who are cheap that they can build around. Like, they could be entering that top tier as well.
I'm going to take a thumbs up from all 3 of you. Chiefs definitely still there because there is wavering faith, right? Thumbs up, everybody's okay with the Chiefs. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to the next teams then.
Yep.
They're on the bubble, we reckon. So, okay, Ian, which 2 teams who are on the bubble in our list do you think should be jumped up a tier into that in their window right now?
I would say the Rams, first of all, should be jumped up, and the Broncos. The Rams, I would say, because they still have Matthew Stafford. He's won a Super Bowl. And look, they were young last year. They were kind of up and coming. I don't know that they're up and coming this year. I think they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like, they're here. So to me, the Rams should be there, and they're another team where if they went deep in the playoffs, like, I wouldn't be that surprised. The Broncos look like they're coming. This quarterback, Bo Nix, seems to be better than maybe anyone outside of his family and Sean Payton believed he was last year. Like, they look like they're kind of entering their window. Like, I don't know who exits the group that you have, but I would say those 2 teams for sure look like they're coming.
Hey, listen, we can add without taking away. We've got no rules on this. This is our first show. Phoebe, you agree with that, don't you?
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what Ian's saying. I mean, I think the Broncos are exciting, and we talk so much about having, a young quarterback paired with an incredible, especially offensive-minded head coach. You look at what Sean Payton has done since he got to Denver, and I just think this pairing is fantastic. Plus, you've got Defensive Player of the Year, Pat Surtain, out there as well, and they've only strengthened what they've done with the Broncos. They had a great run last year, and yes, everyone's going to say that the game against the Chiefs, it wasn't fair. They sat so many starters, but all the games leading up to that, I love what I saw from Bo Nix. I also agree with the Rams. I think that Sean McVay is, a coach that's been to the Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl before. But I would say he's done a really smart thing, right? We've seen in the past where they have gotten to the top of the mountain and then had injuries or lost people afterwards. I feel like there's a lot of contingency plans that are built into his depth chart. And ultimately, what does everybody need later in the year? You need a quality backup quarterback because you never know what's going to happen in a 17-game season.
Matt, how difficult is it for these teams on the bubble to not chase it too much? Because like Phoebe says, if your depth chart isn't there, and you put all your money into these free agent signings that might, you think, take you over the edge, but if they don't work out, you're screwed, right?
Well, you are, especially if you want to leverage draft capital. If you start trading early round draft picks, second, third round picks for veteran players and it doesn't work out, I think that's where you get yourself in trouble. We can look at last year, moves like the Buffalo Bills bringing Amari Cooper to bolster the wide receiver room hasn't really done anything. The Chiefs brought in DeAndre Hopkins. He really had a lackluster regular season, didn't help them get over the top. But then there are other moves that work, and Philadelphia's done a great job of that. I think the Rams are one of those teams that to let go Cooper Kupp, to bring in Devontae Adams, that's one of those moves that says, okay, we need to get over the top. This is maybe an upgrade that can help get us there while letting go of fan favorite, someone that's been a rock star for them. You're trying to get that upgrade. You're trying to change things. And it worked for them in the past to move on from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford. They won a Super Bowl when that happened. So I think the Rams are definitely one of those teams that has aggressively made those moves. I mean, the Houston Texans are another team. They completely redid their offensive line from last year to this year, essentially, with a young quarterback in C.J. Stroud. They've struggled at times to get the run game going. Now Joe Mixon is injured. So I think Houston's one of those teams that they have the head coach, they have the defense, they have the quarterback. I think the pieces around the quarterback right now are the biggest question marks.
All right, so let's see the last tier, which are the teams that we think are on the outside of the window, looking in on those teams that do have a better chance. These, we think, have none. And Ian, I guess, what is the biggest priority that all of these teams that don't really have a chance of winning the Super Bowl need to do to get themselves back in the picture?
Well, I think a couple of these teams have already done it. They're just not there as a franchise. The most important thing is to get a guy. And if you're the Cleveland Browns or the Colts, the Raiders, sort of, you're still looking, right? I mean, if you're, who else? Yeah, I mean, some of these teams kind of have a guy. The Saints are still looking, right? The Seahawks are still wanting to make sure they have that franchise guy. But there's a couple of these teams, like Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know where they're going to be in the playoffs, but they got Aaron Rodgers, they got a veteran team. They've done what they need to do. Now it's a matter of just keeping it rolling. The Falcons and the Bears are two more teams where I would say they have done what they need to do. Get a good young quarterback, get a cheap one, use draft capital and money to build around them. I don't know that the rest of the teams are there talent-wise, but they've done what they need to do, whether they hit or miss. However, if Michael Penix is a guy, then the Falcons are good. If Caleb Williams is exactly what the Bears think, the Bears are good. They just need to catch up talent-wise the rest of the roster around them. But I think both those teams I mentioned at least take a step forward, probably end up making the playoffs this year, which, is a good place to be.
And that is exactly why we love the sport. And we have no idea who's going to be there in Santa Clara. And I think exactly. And I think Phoebe, who's going to stick around for a little bit longer, but Phoebe thinks I've been a little bit harsh on the Jags and the Steelers as well. So Phoebe's going to stay. But for the moment, we want to say thank you so much to Ian and Matt for joining us on this first ever edition of The Whole 10 Yards. Ian Rappaport and Matt Miller, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Awesome.
Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, if you're new to the NFL, you might find the number of players on each squad or roster quite overwhelming. Never mind the range of positions they play. I have a friend who always remarks upon how it's crazy that you have a guy who's employed to do just one thing. On the whole 10 yards, that kind of specialist is exactly what we celebrate. So each week, we're going to shine a spotlight, a bright, spectacular spotlight on one of the most underrepresented positions in the whole league.
No punt intended.
This is Blake Gillikin. He's a punter in the NFL. He plays for the Arizona Cardinals and looks like this without his helmet. When he's finished playing football, he wants to be a surgeon.
No punt intended.
Finally, it's time for another new recurring feature, one that will be just as informative. Each week we'll have expertise that we want to make sure that you get the benefit of, and in the spirit of welcoming a broad church to the whole 10 yards, we'd like you to get involved. It's our Ask Me Anything segment, where a viewer poses a question which we will attempt to answer. The we there is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting because it will usually be someone else. Like this week, it's going to be Phoebe. So, Phoebe Schechter, our first one ever, comes from Stephen in Stirling. It is this: how are teams assigned a place in either one of the NFL's conferences, the AFC or NFC? So, Phoebe, this will be a little bit of a history lesson, will it not?
It will. So I'm so glad that you asked this, Stephen from Sterling. You know, the NFL seems very confusing, to be honest, because essentially it's made out of the AFC and the NFC, 16 teams in each, being the 32 total teams. However, when we go back in history, you're looking essentially to 1970. And this is actually where the league, the NFL and AFL, merged together. So the league then split into two conferences, your AFC, the American Football Conference, and the NFC, the National Football Conference. Now, when the NFL teams joined with the AFL teams, which became the AFC, only had 10 teams. And the NFL, which became essentially the NFC and AFC, they had 16. So essentially, they gave 3 of those teams to join the AFC. There were some interesting things that happened within this, I'll be honest. Some names were picked out of the hat at one point because teams didn't want to have to move divisions. They were also paid quite a bit of money to join into another conference. But essentially, we ended up at one point with 13 teams in the AFC and the NFC. And that was really the conference for ages. And then eventually the last team that joined were the Houston Texans. And that was in 2002, which really wasn't that long ago. And that was the 32nd team that joined. So over the past few years, different teams would join in and become different elements of either the AFC or NFC. Now, the AFC, I must say, did try and keep it geographical, whereas the NFC didn't seem to mind so much, and they couldn't actually really even agree. So AFC does seem a little bit more geographical, but within the conference, both conferences, you have a north, south, east, and west. And I'll be honest, some of those teams are actually in those areas, but you have to keep in mind, some of these teams have also moved throughout their years. For example, the Indianapolis Colts used to be the Baltimore Colts, and the Raiders, they used to be, before they were in Las Vegas, they were in Oakland. And so you've got a lot of different teams that are still moving around, but everything's been set. No team has moved since 2017, since the San Diego Chargers moved to LA. The end.
I tell you what, if Stephen asked that for doing his homework for him, he's going to pass that test. Thank you, Phoebe. Really appreciate that. Wonderful to see you, Phoebe Schechter. We'll speak to you again soon, and I promise next time we'll talk more about the Bills.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phoebe. Now you can get in touch with Ask Me Anything, literally anything. It's via the BBC Sport website. So the BBC has both some new and returning ways to follow the best of the action from the NFL. The BBC Sport website and app will have a live text page every Sunday night. Well, there'll be highlights and clips throughout the week, while each Sunday, 5 Live Sports Extra will also have commentary on a game in the late window. That's just before 9:30. For week 1, it's the Lions at the Packers. And of course, we're back every week live on Tuesday night and then on demand on iPlayer too. Thanks for going the whole 10 yards with us. See you next time. Bye-bye.